Hello, my name is Mrs. Engel, and I am going to be reading chapter 14 and 15 of La Línea. Hablo un poquito español, so I do generally tend to skip the Spanish part, so sorry about that. And then if you are in my guided group, remember you are always going to say this chapter or these chapters contribute to the plot of the story because who, always Miguel, is doing why, what does that show, prove, or reveal, and why is that important? So here we go. My stomach growled loudly, waking me from my nap. I kicked my backpack angrily. I regretted gobbling down every bite of Abuelita's tacos and fruit the day before. Suddenly, without a word, food appeared. It came out of pockets, duffel bags, backpacks, paper sacks. Someone peeled oranges and passed the pieces around. My share was 2 small slices. The black man took out a tortilla, unwrapped it, and tore it into rough chunks to share. There were pieces of taco, tortilla, some dry cookies. Elena dug up a brown, squishy banana. She broke off an end piece and passed it up to me. She knew it was the only part of the banana I liked, and she meant it as a small peace offering. I ate it, but I didn't feel like making peace with her. I would never forgive her stupidity. Out the window, I saw a large landscape had changed. A thick forest, almost a jungle, lined the rutted road. The bus slowed to a crawl. A long line of people were walking single file on both sides of the road, most headed in the opposite direction from us. Through the front window of the bus, I could barely see the outline of a town in the distance. A lazy green river snaked along the road part of the way. Discarded plastic bottles, cars, tires, and rusty cans littered the banks. A small flotilla of makeshift rafts ferried dozens of people across the slow-moving water from Guatemala to Mexico. Javi pointed. "Look," he said knowingly. "See how easy it is here? I told you. You pay a few pesos, and they bring you back across." Small open-air stands in the palm frond roofs sold a variety of goods: food, cigarettes, beer, clothing of all kinds, hats. Several stalls advertised notaries who could provide expert assistance with documents. I laughed to myself. This was the border. You could buy anything here. You could get anything here. You just had to pay for it. Javier nudged me with his elbow. "There, up there. It's the bridge we cross. Over there is Guatemala." He pointed, then shifted his body closer. "But why should we have to cross over? You just come back the same day or the next? Doesn't that seem ridiculous to you?" We'll stop before the bridge for procedures, the usual paperwork. They take us off the bus and escort us across." He leaned his head even closer and whispered in my ear, "Watch me carefully. I'm going to try an old trick that has proved useful several times in the past. If you see a chance, escape." Javier looked around the bus at all the young men. He turned in his seat and looked at Elena, then at me again. He smiled to himself as if he had a private joke. "Pass the word to everyone," he said. "Tell them I told you, but be quiet about it." I whispered Javi's instructions to Elena and to the brothers in front of us. I told them to pass it on. I leaned across the aisle and delivered them to the black man. His brows knit together as I spoke. He leaned forward to relay the message. Before long, the news of the possible escape traveled the length of the bus. We sat high in our seats, and for the first time since the disaster with Morales began, I felt hopeful. Even if Javi's scheme failed, whatever it was, we would have tried. As Javier predicted, the bus ground to a halt next to a small adobe building. A slight, mousy man with a uniform motioned for the federales. One exited the bus and huddled with the border official. Straight ahead was the bridge, a rickety structure that looked like it couldn't support the weight of a bicycle, much less a bus. Morales ordered us off and herded us close to the building. I clutched my backpack and eyed Javi sideways, waiting and wondering. Morales gave us a mean look and fondled the pistol in his holster and moved out of earshot. He continued to stab his clipboard with his index finger, trying to make some point. The immigration official appeared to disagree, shaking his head. The other federales wandered over toward Morales. Papers were passed back and forth, heads bent over Morales's clipboard, check marks were made. I was sure some money would change hands. They'd pay each other to keep quiet about all the things that each was doing wrong. Morales's face got redder by the moment. I couldn't imagine him running drugs or guns or prostitutes. We were probably nothing to him, just a little extra pocket change. Javi whispered in my ear, "He wants to dump us like trash in Guatemala." Well, he's got a surprise coming. Watch me ruin Morales' day. Javi began to walk toward the officials. He swayed and stumbled, clutching his throat and choking. Then he fell flat on the ground, right in front of Morales. Eyes rolled back in his head until I could see only the whites. His legs and arms started to jerk violently. White foam appeared from the corner of his mouth. He wailed, and he sounded more animal than human. Javi had said it was an old trick, but it looked like the real thing. A crowd gathered, mixing with our group. Morales looked at Javi like he was some strange creature he had never seen before. Finally, Morales began a feeble attempt to control Javi's failing limbs. He got his beefy arms around Javi's chest and yelled to the officials, "Get over here! Get this guy out of here!" I grabbed Elena's hand and took one slow step back. I made eye contact with the two brothers and the black man. We nodded to each other. Already the 5 or 6 other men had disappeared. They left quickly and silently, melting into the crowd that surrounded Javier. It was as if they had never existed. I turned and ran, dragging Elena off after me. I heard screams, gunshots, and Morales's booming voice. Okay, now a lot of times I like to stop and I like to think, who? It's always Miguel, okay? Always, always. And the what is an action. So what he did is Miguel grabs his sister's hand and runs to try to escape. Okay, let's see what is revealed or why that is important within our story. A halt, or I'll shoot. More shots rang out. Was Morales mad enough to shoot Javi right there? Had he figured out it was a trick? Javi had been taking a big risk. He had more to lose than we did, a lot more. After all, he had a family to think about, a son my age, a daughter, a wife, and he was a lot older, ancient, even more than Papa. He had already tried to make it and had failed. If he escaped Morales, if he made it from Guatemala again, he'd be desperate. Who wouldn't? We ran faster than we'd ever run before. I held Elena's hand tighter than I needed to. I wouldn't lose her. I intended to put her on the bus first, that I could find home to San Juanito, and then I would go north alone. I didn't even want to think about what Morales would do if he caught us. All right, I'm going to continue thinking about what might be revealed during this action, as well as why that is important as I read chapter 15. We had 2 choices for escape: back in the direction of the bus traveled, cutting into the dense forest around the bend, or straight toward the center of town. I chose the second. We ran headlong into the crowds of people. Maybe we could blend in and lose Morales forever. "Miguel," Elena huffed, "stop for a minute." She jerked her hand away and throttled back a little, sending piles of knockoff watches, cheap jewelry, soda, snacks, sports caps, and newspapers. She leaned against the back of the stall. I tried to catch my breath, but the air was so humid, it felt like I was breathing water. Sweat streamed down our faces, necks, and arms, and dripped to the ground. "I can't run any more like this." Elena put down her string bag and motioned to her clothing. Her long skirt grazed her feet, and the hem now torn and dirty. Her toes peeked out from a pair of sandals. Her shawl had fallen off one shoulder and the end was dragged on the ground. I look around. We had ended up behind a long line of stalls on the edge of the town. Except for a few stacks of boxes, the narrow shaded passageway was empty. It wasn't a bad place to hide for a while. At least we could catch our breath. Elena squatted down and opened her bag. Turn around, Miguel. I'm going to change. She pulled out a pair of jeans, her sneakers, and a t-shirt. I ignored her command, took her bag, and opened it further. There was only one other shirt and a sweater. At the bottom was a little purse of Mama's letters and Elena's wallet. I grabbed it quickly, holding it over my head beyond her reach. Give it back, Miguel. That's my money. She reached for the wallet, and I swatted her hand away. I sat down on the dirt cross-legged, opened the wallet, and took out the money. I counted the bills one by one, very slowly, looking pointedly at Elena in between each. It was not as much as Don Clemente gave me. It wasn't enough to pay for a coyote. I knew that. Still, it was a lot of money for a 13-year-old to be carrying around. Where did you get this? Donde? Donde? I commanded. I couldn't imagine how she got her hands on so much cash. It couldn't have come from Abuelita or anyone else in the family. Elena stared at the ground sullenly. It's enough to go north, isn't it? That's all that matters. And she started to cry, just like she always did when she got into trouble. I hissed at her. You got us into this mess. I'll be all the way to the border by now if it weren't for you. I grabbed her wrist tightly and twisted it. You will tell me where you got this money. Now. Ouch, Miguel, let go. You're hurting me, Elena complained. Her eyes again filled with tears. I tightened my hold. I didn't care if I hurt her. I hoped that I hurt her. Elena was silent for several minutes, and then she gave in. Juanito, she murmured, continuing to look at the ground. What? I couldn't believe I heard her correctly. Juanito, she repeated. He gave me the money. I went to him and asked, and he just gave it to me. She took up a handful of dirt and let it fall slowly through her fingers to the ground. She did this over and over as if she's shifting the earth for something she lost and couldn't find. How could you, Elena? He's a sellout. He would sell out his own people. I was disgusted. We'll never be able to pay him back. Never. He'll always want more. I never told Elena how much I hated Juanito for using Don Clemente to get on the soccer team. But she lived in San Juanito just like I did, and everyone knew what everyone else was like. Juanito wasn't just a lazy cheater who cut corners to get what he wanted. He was dangerous. If he wasn't already, he'd be soon trafficking drugs for one of the big cartels, and he wouldn't let Don Clemente get in his way. So we have Miguel. He grabs his sister's hand. He tries to run and escape. They are able to escape. But what is revealed is that his sister, his sister, got money from Juanito. Okay? And then we're going to see why that might be important. I could actually put that here. I can infer that if they ever make it back, Juanito will be looking for them to pay him back. And they can't. Something like that. Okay, let's see if anything else gets revealed or not for the rest of this chapter. How did you do all this? I said coldly. In a small monotone, Elena knew me, and she watched every move I made in the weeks before I left. She explained how she looked in my secret hiding place behind the wall to find Don Clemente's instructions. She told me how she searched out Juanito in the cantina where he hung out, and how she went right up to him and asked for the money, how he just pulled it out of his pockets as if it was spare change. How could you make everyone worry? What about Abuelita? How could you leave her alone? You were supposed to stay and take care of her. And you didn't realize it was enough money to follow Don Clemente's plan? Didn't you understand what would happen? Elena wiped the tears off her face, snuffed, and blew her nose into the hem of her skirt. You don't care about me, Miguel. You only care about you and your plans. You never cared about leaving me alone. I'm the one who wanted to go north more than anyone. But you never bothered to ask how I felt, and you wouldn't understand anyway, Elena said finally. We're going home, Elena, and we're going home together. We'll take the money back to Anito, every single peso. And then, I don't know. I paused. I felt defeated. I'd have to talk to Don Clemente again. I'd need to start all over. And I'd have to call Papa and have him threaten Elena with her life if she moved even 1 foot out of San Juanito. In the end, Elena did what I said. We changed clothes, bought us caps and cheap sunglasses. Elena pushed her hair up under her cap, and I pulled mine down over my eyes. We didn't want Morales to recognize us easily. He still might be in town. I took the money Juanito had given Elena and tucked it into my own pouch for safekeeping. I left Elena at a small restaurant where we splurged on Javieros con whatever. Eggs, I think. No, I don't know. Hablo un poquito español. I went to the bus station to check the schedule. The next bus to San Juanito left at 6 o'clock the following morning. I bought 2 one-way tickets home. In the evening, I took Elena to the only movie theater in town. We sat through a double feature to kill time. The screen was wavy and torn, and the sound system crackled. The words were out of sync with the picture. The air conditioner worked off and on, from hot to cold to hot again. I sat and watched and remembered nothing of the movie. I didn't think about anything at all. I didn't want to plan or hope or dream again. Not ever again. Then late at night, I searched for a place for us to sleep. The hotels caught too much for a dirty mattress in a small airless room. The police would be checking the bus station. I decided we should spend the rest of the night outside. I looked and looked, dragging Elena after me. I finally settled on a porch jutting out from one of the end of the Mercado. I wasn't the only one with this idea. There were others sleeping there. At least we wouldn't be alone. I didn't ask Elena's opinion, and she didn't offer one. I hoped that she spent the worst night of her life. And then, for the 100th time since leaving San Juanito, I wished I didn't have a sister. Ooh. So let's see. It is revealed that his sister got money from San Juanito. I can infer if they ever make it back to pay him back. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna delete that infer statement. Let's see. That his sister got money back. So we can say this is important because they have to make a plan to go back home and not to La Linea. Okay? And you'll join me when I start reading chapter 16. If I can figure out how to turn off the recording. There we go.